ekam aksharam hruvi nirantaram bhasate swayam likyate hridaya kuhara madhye kevalam mamatram yamaham iti sakshat atmarupena bhati hृदि विषमनसा चिन्वता मज्जता अवलचलन आत्मनिष्ठो देहं ब्रह्मयवत् जडात्मकम् अहं बुद्धिर्न तस्यास्त्यतो नाहं तत्तद्भावशुद्धिसमये सिद्धात्मसद्भाव कोऽहं भावयुतः कुतो परभिः दृष्टात्मनिष्ठात्मना सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचल शिवः पूर्णं विभाति स्वयं सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचल शिवः पूर्णं विभाति स्वयं Namo Ramana. In this, the Friday Satsang from Ramanacentre for Learning, I am standing in for Dilipji. Dilipji would usually read and comment on the questions and answers put to Bhagavan, the questions put to Bhagavan in the years 1900 to 1950, compiled by our founder president on self-enquiry. That will be for first 20 minutes. The second 20 minutes will be the practice of Atma Vicharam, and the satsang will conclude with the address by talk by our president, Dr. Shardaka, and we will close it by chanting one of the shlokas on Bhagavan. We begin today allowing Dilipji to continue his enquiries I am taking up a particular question answer that is present in day by day, which was presented in our morning satsang. We have been reading day by day with Ramana Maharshi, day by day with Bhagavan in our morning satsang. There was a unique presentation of Spurana in page number 5, and we had seen that in different context. So we had in fact taken that for a special discussion in different satsangs. That is in page 5. Those who are interested can see in day by day. Why I say unique? Because the 3 works, talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi, day by day, and letters from Sri Ramanashram, if we take they are of one genre, then in day by day, some unique discussions are there which we can all benefit from. One such discussion we found the other day. So the first 20 minutes, let us dwell on it. This is page number 211. That is 25th April 1946. I am directly going to the question. A visitor asked Bhagavan, when I try to be without all thoughts, I pass into sleep. What do I do about it? When I try to be without all thoughts, I pass into sleep. What should I do about it? Bhagavan, once you go to sleep, you can do nothing in that state. But while you are awake, try to keep away all thoughts. Why think about sleep? Even that is a thought, is it not? If you are able to be without any thought while you are awake, that is enough. When you pass into sleep, that state in which you were before falling asleep will continue. And again, when you wake up, you will continue from where you had left off when you fell into slumber. This is a contribution that has been highlighted by Kunjaswami in his memoirs, but it is repeated here, where Bhagavan says that if you keep practicing of erasing the thoughts, then allow sleep to take over. When it takes you over, let it take over, because at that point of sadhana, the sleep state takes you over. And Bhagavan says the same state will continue in sleep. That is, if you are able to be without any thought while you are awake, that is enough. When you pass into sleep, that state in which you were before falling asleep will continue in sleep. So that is why we have this, the evening practice of 9 to 9:30, reading from talks or reading from one of Bhagavan's teachings, and then sitting for 15 minutes practice. The idea is get ready so that if the sleep state is nearby, then you can practice that and then allow sleep to take over. Bhagavan says in that sleep, what you were practicing prior to that will continue. When you wake up, you will continue from where you had left off when you fell into slumber. So long as there are thoughts of activity, so long there would be sleep also. Thought and sleep are counterparts of one and the same thing. So Bhagavan is saying, if thoughts are there, then sleep must be there. He is going to expand on that in the next paragraph. But he is saying, so far as thought is there, thought activity is there, there will be sleep. How you take it, whether you are anxious about it or allow it to pass by as a witness, that is what the sadhana brings about. Bhagavan quoted the Gita and said, we should not sleep very much or go without it altogether, but sleep only moderately. That is known to us. The sleep and food are to be in moderation. To prevent too much sleep, we must try and have no thoughts or chalana, movement of the mind. We must eat only sattvic food, and that only in moderate measure, and not indulge in too much physical activity. See, the clue given here is that the thought and sleep are said to be counterparts. If thought is there, sleep will definitely be there. But we should not forget that food is also a thought, physical activity is also a thought. These are thoughts. So, to prevent too much sleep, because in sleep you cannot do sadhana, sleep has to be in moderation. How to keep it in moderation? We must only eat sattvic food, and that too in moderate measure. If you eat too much, then you will sleep more. If you eat too rajasic or tamasic food, then also much of sleep may be required. And we should not indulge in too much physical activity. Then the tiredness also, these are also thoughts. We should not forget that. So they should be in moderation. The physical activity as well as food, along with regulation of thoughts. So far as physical activity is there will be sleep. There will be counterpart of sleep, but how you take it and how the thought-free state becomes adhara. What is now the waking, dream and sleep, they become the adhara for our experience. But then as the vichara deepens and the sattva patti or the self is made real or is found to be real, then that self becomes the adhara, and these three states come and go. From a state where we are trapped in the three states, the consciousness becomes the adhara, in which the waking, dream and deep sleep come and go. The more we control thought, activity and food, the more we shall be able to control sleep. That means food and activity are also thoughts, is what we should grasp. That the senses are also thoughts. So too much activity there also will necessitate longer sleep. Moderation ought to be the rule, as explained in Gita, for the sadhak on the path. The sleep is the first obstacle, as explained in the books, for all sadhaks. The second obstacle is said to be vikshepa, or the sense objects of the world which divert one's attention. The first obstacle for sadhana is the sleep itself. Second obstacle is the interest in self, the sense objects. We can easily understand that the operation of senses cannot take place without thoughts in the background. The senses themselves are thoughts. So the sensory objects attracting the consciousness indicates that thought activity is still very much strongly there. Moderation ought to be the rule, as explained in the Gita, for the sadhak on the path. Sleep is the first obstacle, as explained in the books, for all sadhaks. The second obstacle is vikshepa, or the sense objects of the world which divert one's attention. The third is said to be kashaya, or thoughts in the mind about previous experiences and sense objects. What is kashaya? The ruminations that we have about the previous experiences or about the sense objects. So that is dropped by enquiry and practice of self-attention. Then the rumination, which the psychologists say, take away about 60% of the thought activity, are merely unnecessary ruminations about the past experiences and the sense objects. The fourth is ananda, which is also called an obstacle, because in that state, a feeling of separation from the source of ananda, enabling the enjoyer to say, I am enjoying ananda, is present. There was a period in sadhana where I used to say, I am thought free. I used to tell my mother when we used to have discussions, she used to remember the Kashaya activities of the past experiences in the family. This happened, that happened, they took away this, they gave this. So in my sadhana, I had reached a point where that Kashaya was not obstructing. But then the thought-free state was claimed as mine. That is, the peace or the ananda of the thought-free state, I was enjoying. And when she was going into Kashaya, I used to tell, why you are also not thought-free like me? Why do you go into this? That means the irritation used to come because I was possessing the thought-free state. I was enjoying the thought-free state. Bhagavan puts it so beautifully here that there is a separation from the source of Ananda, he says. That is, when I say I am enjoying Ananda, the source of Ananda is there and I am separate from it. Whereas when I inquire who is having the peace, then that I, which is the source of the enjoyer and the enjoyed, that is realized. So far as separation is there, even of thought-free state, to feel that I am thought-free, that is an obstruction. That is the, in one sense, the last obstruction. But we should not say last obstruction because the other obstructions may also be there in subtler forms. We might not have overcome them. But then these are the 4 obstructions which Bhagavan lines out. One is sleep. The second is the sensory objects, the interest in sensory objects. Then the recollecting of past experiences and the memories of sense objects. And finally, the I am the enjoyer mode, where the Ananda source is separate and you are separate. Now from this, Bhagavan is indicating that whatever you may be having as thought, there that thought source is separate, you are separate. That is what is Bhagavan indicating. If Ananda's source is separate and you are separate, if I am enjoying, then any thought you are experiencing, you are feeling the source of that thought is separate, I am separate. Whereas there is a source common to both the seer and the seen, the experiencer and the experienced. That is what will absorb this final obstacle of I am enjoying the thought-free state. Even this has to be surmounted, and the final stage of samadhana or samadhi has to be reached, where one becomes ananda or one with the reality, and the duality of enjoyer and enjoyment ceases in the ocean of Satchitananda or the self. There, I am enjoying goes, the ego is dissolved, the ananda is dissolved in the self-luminous self. There are no objects. The mother is not outside the self-luminous self. For the self-luminous self to be obstructed, mother, the chanting of any shlokas, when the Ashtotram is going, we are inquiring who is the listener. When we come to the self-luminous self, we will understand that that chanting, that person, everything is happening within the self-luminous self. And then not even that. It is not even within the self-luminous self. The chanting is the self-luminous self. The self-luminous self alone is, that is how the Satchitananda alone is, says Bhagavan. I thought I will read from this. Now we can sit for the next 20 minutes in the practice of Atmamcharam. Revatima will set the time for us. Thank you. request Dr. Katra to give us her talk. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as a self in all beings. By the immense grace of the self manifest as Ramana, in this part of the satsang, we are meditating on the verses of Ramana Gita, which is a compilation in 18 chapters by Ganapati Muni of the answers given by Bhagavan to various doubts raised by seekers of truth, most of them being disciples of Ganapati Muni himself. And they have all raised various questions, and Muni has compiled these question answers into 18 chapters under various heads. And we are presently meditating on the 10th chapter, which is on Sangha Vidya, or on society. It's a conversation between Yoganatha and Bhagavan. And Yoganatha had asked, what is the relationship between the individual and society? And Bhagavan has given the beautiful example of how the various limbs of the body, the organs of the body, are working for the body. How they are in unison, in harmony with the body. Bhagavan says one should be in harmony similarly with society and work for the good of society. He says one should work for the good of society through Kaya, Vacha, Manas, body, mind and speech. And one should also not only do it oneself, one should enthuse one's inner circle to do likewise and then expand that circle. So he says one should start serving first one's own inner circle. Then that may be the family that helps us to get above the selfishness, as it is called. In our other satsang, we were meditating on the word or the concept of selfishness. Normally, every human activity is only purely selfish. If we see, whether it be taking care of the body or promoting one's own intellectual growth and getting accomplishments, they're all purely selfish. But what happens? We are to move towards the erasing of the ego. Then what happens? In the traditional way, we start getting into the mode of expansion. From this limited I, we make it a slightly larger sense of identity, the family identity. Still wider identity than our own community, maybe the locality in which we live. Then slightly wider, maybe our own state. Then our own country, the whole world, the whole universe. But who is truly selfless? Only one who abides in the self. One who abides in the self alone is selfless, because even the greatest or the most altruistic good deed is also for the sake of one's own happiness. So today, while meditating on the question answers, we found that even the bliss of the self, if it is seen to be an experience, if there is duality in it, in that anubhava, if we recall that experience as being ours and we claim to possess that experience, then again even that becomes a hurdle to self-abidance. So when that is the case, why is it? Because it is again for me. It is my experience. It is my anubhava. It is always having that kalmasha, that blot of selfishness. There is an undertone, there is a subtle undertone of selfishness in this, even in the so-called selfless acts that we may be performing. However, if one abides in the self, then there is no other. So where is selfishness? And if we look at Bhagavan's life, we see that absolutely no sense of self is there. Nothing for himself. Absolutely nothing for himself. Not even clothing, not even food, not even a place to stay. It is all just by the divine will, where he is just the organ of that supreme divine body, that organ performing its function perfectly as Bhagavan says. So the point is that, why does Bhagavan say you serve the society? Because if one is in disharmony with society, then where can one work for one's own self-knowledge? If one is in disharmony with one's family, then where is the question of one's turning back to oneself? It doesn't mean that one sacrifices the pursuit of self-knowledge for the sake of the family, for the sake of the society. You cannot say, oh, I am serving society, therefore I have no time to do self-inquiry. That is not the point, because Bhagavan has come to this answer, and the Muni has put this answer of Bhagavan's. The chapter on society is only the 10th chapter. In the 3rd chapter itself, Daivarata has questioned Bhagavan as to what is the paramount duty of a human being. And Bhagavan has said, abiding in the self is the paramount duty of the human being. That is the highest duty. Then what about these questions? Why are they asked? They are asked because if one does not have harmony with oneself, with one's own entity, it is not possible to move within towards self-inquiry. It's a strange kind of a situation where a holistic sense of identity can be easily crossed over rather than a disturbed identity, because a disturbed identity has a greater grip on us. We are completely entangled in that identity. When the identity is disturbed, when the identity is in conflict with someone or something, at that point of time, that conflict is something which is occupying us completely. Whereas there is no need for that conflict. Of course, if we go to self-inquiry, all this is automatically taken care of. If one pursues the paramount duty of abiding in the self, if one does self-inquiry, then will one be any different than what Bhagavan has described as the ideal person in society? Once one is given to self, if one is abiding in the self, there is no question, because there is only that which is perfect. What if one is performing self-inquiry in order to attain self-knowledge? Even then, there is no possibility of being in conflict with anybody or anything. Because when one is inquiring who I am, will one be interested in pursuing one's own selfish desires? One will not be interested in pursuing selfish desires. Even when one is on the path of self-inquiry, one would have given up all selfishness, because until then, this identity is very, very, very important. But the moment one gets into the path of self-inquiry, the identity begins to be erased gradually, and then automatically harmony happens. One works only for the good of the whole, because there is no intent of working for oneself. So whatever work happens will be automatically for the good of the society. Just as organs in the body do not work with a sense of doership, that is why they are contributing to the entire good. Similarly, when the sense of doership is erased through the inquiry, who am I, then automatically one will be in harmony with one's entire society, and then one may work for one's family, or one may work for the inner circle, or for the whole. It does not matter. It will happen as it is ordained, as per the entire story, as per the entire organism's requirement. And that Bhagavan will dwell on actually in the next chapter, in chapter 11. He clarifies what are the things that a person who abides in the self may do and may not do, and how it really does not matter, but this is how it may manifest. So Bhagavan says that if one, in one's activities, one must serve, be of use to society, and one must enthuse others also to do so. One must tell others also to share. One must teach others also around us. One must encourage them to share and to have love for the entire society. Then Yoganatha had asked, which is greater, peace or power? Now, is our sadhana for peace or is our sadhana for power? Bhagavan says the sadhana should be for peace. For the individual, peace is supreme. For society, power is required. So Bhagavan says if you are working only for society, then you have to focus on power, raise the society to the level it needs to be raised, and then the goal of peace should be given to the society. Whereas for the individual, right from the beginning, the goal is peace. Peace for purifying one's own mind. Peace is required. We also saw how Bhagavan is a repository of peace, and therefore is a repository of all power. Muni says that he is Shaktimantam Shanti Samyutam. Shantir Nitantamadhika Paramasya Shakti. He says. Then finally Yoganatha asks, great sage, what is the supreme goal to be attained by the entire human society? See, what is the relationship of the individual was the first question which he had asked. Then he says, Yoganatha says, Sarvasyapi cha sanghasya naranam rishikunjara gantavyam samudayena kimparam dharanitale. On this earth, which is the goal for society? What should we work for if we are working for society's good? Then Bhagavan says, Samudayena sarvasya sanghasya tanudarinam saubhratram samabhavena gantavyam paramuchyate. Bhagavan says, Samudayena sarvasya, for all the societies, society of the humans, human society, because it is about the humans. Naranam Rishikunjara is what Yoganatha asked, and so he says, Saubhratram samabhavena, brotherhood, Saubhratram. How? What kind of brotherhood? Not a forced brotherhood. That is not possible. Saubhratram samabhavena. By samabhava, the brotherhood which arises, that is supreme. That is the supreme goal to be attained by human society. Meaning to say that when everyone abides in the self, that alone is the sense of samabhava, self-abidance. The greater the degree of self-abidance in society, if we say there is something like society, so people are working now, as Nandakumarji says, towards getting mindfulness, awareness in society. And it is our hope that one day we will also be able to take self-enquiry to society at large, maybe right from children onwards, right from every individual onwards. Share it as much as possible. If Bhagavan wills it so, that he will take this society to the state of Param. If Bhagavan's avatar Leela is for that purpose, then he will see to it that self-enquiry becomes a household name. It is there with every child. We hear of such a society in the story of it's not Chudala, it is Hema Chuda and Hema Lekha. In Tripura Rahasyam, there is a story of Hema Chuda and Hema Lekha, where Hema Lekha is an already Jivan Mukta Purusha. She is a daughter of a sage, and the king falls in love with her and gets wedded to her, and she becomes his guru, guiding him right up to the point of Sahajanishta. And she takes him across even the Nirvikalpa. First, of course, across the sense experiences by showing to him how meaningless are the sense experiences. And after revealing to him her own body, she reveals to him as a skeleton, whereby he is shocked, and then she also gives him stories of how there is no such thing as real loyalty, may not be there. There may be disappointments, there may be ups and downs in one's achievements and leading to sorrow, great sorrow. The king then crosses over from that, and he is unable to hold the truth, for which she gives him the support of bhakti to Mahadeva. And after that, she teaches him the Atma Vidya. And when he goes into Nirvikalpa Samadhi, which is that state of Ananda, bliss which is experiencing, she wakes him up. And he says, "Why have you woken me up from that blissful state?" And she says, "If just the movement of your eyelids, the closing or opening of your eyelids is going to disturb your bliss, of what use is that bliss? It should be sahaja." And then he crosses over and gets into the Sahajanishta, and it is said that everyone in their land was also a Sahajanishta on account of their being Sahajanishta, including even the birds would talk, the parrots in the homes would only talk about self-avoidance. So Bhagavan says, Saubhratrena para shantim shantir Anyonyam degadharinam tadeyam shobhate sarva bhumirekam griham yatha. That is the meaning of the whole world being a one single household. Through brotherhood, peace and amity will prevail among mankind, and the world will flourish like a single household. The world will flourish like a single household, says Bhagavan. In the state of Anmanishta, it will become like that, because there will be no differences. So everyone who is an Anmanishta is in that state of having the whole. If the Anmanishta comes out, opens his eyes and functions in the world, it is only in a single household that he is functioning. So this conversation, says Muni, was happened on 15th of August 1917, and Professor Swaminathan, so he says this compassionate conversation, so this took place Abhut Panchadashe Ghasre Samvadasoyamashtame Yoganathasya Yatino Maharsheshcha Dayavatah. Out of compassion, Bhagavan has given these answers, says Muni. And Professor Swaminathan would say 15th of August this conversation took place, and it was on 15th of August 30 years later that India got her independence And further, India is to shine with the glory of Atmanishtha. That is the dream of Muni, that India will shine with the glory of Atmanishtha. When there is Atmanishtha, of course, there is no India, there is no world, there will be no divisions. It may be even allegorically described as one household, but then when there are no divisions, even that would be transcended. But for our sake, for us to understand the beauty, the glory of Atmanishtha, Bhagavan says the whole earth will be one household. Absolute harmony. To indicate the absolute harmony of that state, Bhagavan has given these answers out of compassion. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.
Apara Satchit Sukhavari Rashi Yasyormi Matram Bhuvanam Samastam Guhahitam Tam Ramanam Gaviram Chintavihinam Hridicintaya